All right, we're gonna get started again. So the first session we focused on more kind of high-level conceptual what is play. This one we want to get into the real-life project, specifically this one, as well as any other ones you want to talk about, and real-life experiences. So again, I'm starting off with a audience question as an icebreaker. So this is from someone in the audience, anonymous, and it's kind of like a deep one for an icebreaker. So Lego often collaborates with many companies. What is the most challenging part of integrating another company's IP with Lego?
I have a good one for this one, if I can take it. Early on, we had one of our directors who started the collaboration with Nintendo. So he had been working many years on establishing that connection. And finally, we had these first meetings in 2015 or something. And I was relatively young. So I asked him very straight, so how do you do this? And he says very in Denmark we have a type that we call a Joplin type. That's south, very low key, very relaxed kind of guy. And he was like, well, Jonathan, it's kind of like a relationship. First you meet, and you're trying to figure out, is there an energy? And then you're trying to figure out, is the other person going to text me back? Or should we text them back? And then maybe you meet again and there is an energy. And he kind of went on with this analogy of a relationship. And eventually it was well, it's kind of at one point you got to be serious. And you're like, so are we going to put a ring on this or what? And I love the analogy because it's very much my experience is that it, at least from my experience, it never just happens with you sign a contract and that's it. But maybe some companies do that, but I think good work comes out of taking each other serious as partners and asking, what do you want out of this? And then I want this out of that. Can we make these things go together? And so in integrating other people's IP, it's a very delicate thing. And like a relationship, there's going to be conflicts and there's going to be some tough arguments. But if you started it with the interest of maintaining a relationship, you're not going to see the whole thing crash down over some contract that's not written for whatever reason, because you have that conversation and you take each other serious.
Kevin, anything you want to add?
Yeah, just that maybe building on Jonathan's point, I think there has to be a dream. There has to be something that kind of makes, and there's a little bit of a trope, but that 1 + 1 becomes 3, that there's a reason why we, that if it's your company, we couldn't do it with another company. We couldn't do it with one of your competitors. There has to be this is, we belong together. And I think another partnership I was talking about at the Media Lab was the same. Lego had actually been collaborating with the Media Lab for over 30 years. They've never done anything together really, because they really had a hard time taking a corporation and an academic institution with very different goals. And so I worked on the last iteration of Lego Mindstorms and the education version of it as well, where we integrated Scratch, which was actually a competitor to we had an internal programming language, and Scratch kind of replaced that. And it was a touchy thing to do, but I think it was because there was this shared dream of the Lifelong Kindergarten research group, the values for play and creativity really harmonized well with Legos, and it became this kind of to what Jonathan says, at some point you're going to get to a point where something in a contract doesn't make sense or something, or there's a monetary aspect that doesn't make sense, and then someone puts their hand out no, we need to do this. We need to do it for the kids, for the people on this team, because they feel like it's important. And I think that's when you have something. Definitely been involved in other partnerships that didn't work out because there wasn't that. There was just you want the Lego name on press material, or you want to have your name on the box, the Lego box. And I've met a lot of those kind of companies, and that never pans out.
Yeah, go ahead.
In a funny way, it's not much different from me and Kevin going to Japan together. Before we flew out, we literally had a conversation I said, my goal for this trip is not being a tourist. I'm not going to go out and see every shrine. I've seen shrines already. I've been to nice places. My goal is to wander around the city and be absolutely like just fascinated with design and architecture and little nerdy things. And maybe some days we'll just sit and work on stuff. And Kevin was like, yeah, we can do that. Like that's that contract we write, but like it's a conversation.
And we also said there's not another person that we could do this with.
Yep.
You and me both. Like you were the only person I could do this trip with, and I think at least you said the same thing the other day. So.
I have hundreds of
Why is it, and this is kind of just building on that, why is it that you two are the only two people you could do this kind of thing together with? What is it that makes you compatible as travel buddies, play
But
partners?
we both have a very similar curiosity about the same types of design. So that's what we bonded over when we initially met. But then the reason we are the only ones we could, like both of us feel that we could only do this trip with the other person is because over the years, the conversations we've had about Japan, you can kind of feel like, are we on the same wavelength? It's kind of like if we talk about a movie and I say, oh, I love this part, and then Kevin goes, oh yeah, but I love this part. I'm like, I hate that part, but cool that you like that. Whereas when we were talking about Japan, we're like, these are the same things we appreciate. If Kevin had said, oh, I just want to go to karaoke every night, I'm like, okay, that's not me you're going with. Like, that's a different trip.
No, like a lot of the projects you're involved in at Lego are fairly big teams, but like we would sit at a lunch and talk about Japan, and then realize that everyone else has left. It was only Jonathan and me left because we could just go on forever, like talking about details, but also that we're different. We're not into exactly the same things, but I think there's enough of like an overlap, like the Venn diagram of Jonathan and Kevin, that we also pull each other in different directions. Like you notice things that I don't, and I get inspired by it.
I think later when we get into the mingle session, I'd love you to draw the Venn diagram of Jonathan and Kevin on this.
That would be a great like a couples exercise.
We'll facilitate this as well. But yeah, bringing it back to this specific project where I suppose you met. With this project, I mean, first a quick lighthearted question. What was the most fun about it?
I'm wondering, like, I don't think everyone here has seen Mario. Should we just try to do a quick demo?
Quick demo would be
Because,
great.
I feel like otherwise we can talk about this and people are going to half understand everything. I'm going to attempt to see if I can just put the
If you
microphone.
can't see, feel free to stand up.
Do the microphone?
Yeah, please just come closer. Like, literally just gather around the table. The screen is small, so the closer you get, the easier. Yeah, Rio, if you can hold that that microphone.
All right, yeah.
And then,
This is like you're getting a product demo from this is great.
Yeah. Okay.
is this one? Is this on? Is this one?
On.
I use this one. This one's better.
Right.
I'm gonna try. So I think if I hold the microphone all the way up, so it will work. So there's a little speaker in him. He has a little screen, and then when I move him around, there's like little footsteps. He collects coins if I jump. And of course, if I jump on the enemies, and you can see he's animated his eyes, animated his facial expressions. Like, this is all the work we put in to make him truly an interactive character. So I spent countless nights, like, making the way he blinks right now. That's a full programming and animation logic that ensures he blinks like a real human being. If you put him on his back, this is going to be harder to see, but he'll fall asleep. I'll just hold the microphone so you can hear it. It takes time like a real human. So he sleeps, and then of course he'll wake back up, or if I shake him, he gets dizzy. But of course, this is like, oh, maybe I can do this. Okay, this is Rio's job is pretty nice.
Sorry, you're fine.
This was like the core, you could say the thing that made this interesting was like, what if we had a character that was alive, that would give kids an emotional thing to play with? But then the thing that had to make it Lego was like, why do you have the bricks right? And Kevin, just interrupt if you want to add something in, otherwise we're just giving a little demo here. We needed a reason for the bricks right, and so I'm just going to put her up, otherwise she's going to snore through this.
Sorry.
So when you're jumping around, we're like, Mario is always in levels. How do you make a level? So now I started a level. There's a timer going on. And while I'm in the level, I can collect coins, or I can go get little power-ups, or I can go on platforms, and I can try to balance on the platforms, or I can go in different materials. So if I go in water, the water is in blue, water in this belly, grass is green. If I go in yellow, it's sand, and if it's red, it starts burning. And of course, we can just defeat Mini Bowser. Yes, and the goal. Oh.
This is such a nostalgic sound.
And so I'd say the easiest way to explain it is that for the kids who are just getting into it, the level building was created as a way to say thumbs up to the kids, like, hey, you built something, you made something, because they can put this together in any way they want. Like, this doesn't come with an instruction, it comes with the different pieces, but then you reconfigure it. That's the creative part. And then because you can get coins going through, that's the part that makes you go, oh, what if I build it differently? What if I get this power up first so I can beat that enemy? So we use what Nintendo does, which is the video game logic, to enhance what Lego does, which is building levels, so that your creative level building is enhanced by the fact that Mario wants to get more coins and you want to play with him. And that's a short demo of Lego Super Mario.
I think a few like small details as well of like the fact that like the countdown is 60 seconds, which also makes it feel a little bit more low stakes. Like I think that's one of the other things that like the original Mario game on Game Boy does so well, is that you spend a lot of your first kind of games dying, like because you're figuring out the game. Like instead of playing through a tutorial, you're just playing the game and you learn by failing, and that's okay because then you just start again. And I think that's another thing that we also really try to encourage, is that kind of like loop that like it doesn't feel like the end of the world, that you maybe didn't get as many coins as you want. You just try again and again and again, and it's fine. I think another thing that you've talked about so many times, Jonathan, is kind of like I think as an interaction designer, I think that's where I got most excited the first time I saw a demo of Mario inside Lego, because Jonathan was on the project way before I was kind of the hand as a gaming controller, which I'd never seen before. That like like Mario's the character, but your hand is the controller. Like I'd never seen that before, and like that was suddenly like the interface between it, and I think that was such a strong concept. Internally at Lego, a little bit strange maybe, because it's like why aren't we just building another like police station or fire station? But like what is this and why? But I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think it's exactly that like marriage between a company like Nintendo that does what they do so well, and Lego's building system and bricks.
On that topic of the learning by failing, you're talking about in the context of a user actually using this, going through the gameplay, etc. But for you two as designers on this project, was there any learning by failing that you are able to share about and will not get sniped by Nintendo or Lego for saying?
I have a funny one that I can share, because I can just talk about it, and like I can't share pictures of it, which would be funny, but Mario didn't always look like this.
What did Mario look like?
He, like, at one point in the design
Are
process,
you allowed to sketch?
I don't think so. But if you imagine the design being very radically different, where like the the face was not, there's no face, he just had a square screen. It was more like, he almost looked like a TV box. And the interesting thing was like, you work on something for such a long time and there's so many challenges, like how do you build the level play? How does Mario react? How do you solve the technology? How do you make the music? How do you technically execute the code, etc., etc., etc.? That when we started to overcome 90% of the challenges, and he had looked like a certain way that I just described for a long time, none of us could see it. And it required very senior people to come into the room and say, like basically told us like, you are completely blindsided and you have to change this. But it's a classic, right? You're getting so close that everyone's just running towards the goal. Yeah. And then somebody who does not care about, like somebody who doesn't have his heart so deep in it, just comes in and goes, you're missing something really, really big here. And then fortunately we listened, we redesigned him, like completely redesigned him, and that's what he looks like now. But that's, you can be so close and think you're done. And that you are not even like, you are 90%. It's just that the 10 last percent will completely break your product if you don't fix it. And that's a really big learning.
I think that's a great point, Jonathan. It's like, and I think especially when, because again, Lego, like in Lego technology is a very minor part of most of it is just ordinary plastic bricks. And I think there's a tendency as a team also, when you invest the kind of money into like putting electronics inside and developing all of that, you kind of get to that point where it's like, well, we've spent so much money on it, like it's the sunk cost fallacy. And that really hits you as a team as well, that you're like, okay, but well, we can't change it or we can't do this or that because we've already sunk so much energy into it. And like Jonathan said, sometimes it requires someone to kind of cut through and say like, well, I'm not impressed. Like it doesn't matter to me that you spend all this money on it, because if it's not going to get the kids excited, then it doesn't work. But that takes courage. It also takes a team that was like willing to say like, yeah, you're right. And then actually, yeah, do it all over again and build it many times. And I think that's been a common thread also for me for all the products and projects I've worked on at Lego, is that we never just build it once. Like you need to build it many, many times. Throw most of the work out. And the best designers I know are the ones that throw out 95% of their work to get to that like golden 5%.
And actually, just to add to that, like the interesting thing which I've learned, again, I can't talk about the recent project I've worked on, but one thing I've learned really, really hardcore recently is like, those last 5% might actually be an incredible product, even though you as a team feel you've stripped away all the things that would make it great. So imagine you've never driven a car, and then somebody pitches you like, I have this thing that's on 4 wheels and it can drive 1,000 kilometers per hour. And everyone's like, wait, that's amazing, let's make it. And then at one point you find out, okay, it can't go 1,000, it can go 500, and everyone's disappointed. And then, it can't go 500, it can go 400, you keep going down. And eventually you have the first car that could go, 40 kilometers an hour? It's still the first car. It's still awesome. Just because you started with a vision of 1,000 kilometers per hour doesn't mean the first car was amazing. But that's the same thing it feels like here, is that everyone had a vision that was so much wilder than what reality can produce sometimes. But that doesn't mean what you end up with can't be great if you make smart decisions. That's a big if, because not all people do that. That's a whole topic in itself. But if you make smart decisions, simplicity and reduction can be incredible.
Are there any other of those sort of mindset shift type of lessons from your time at Lego that you feel could be good for this group to know, for this group to kind of contemplate, think about?
I think maybe just building on what we talked about before, it's like it might sound counterintuitive, but it's a lot easier to just say yes, especially in a country like Denmark, that's very kind of consensus. It's like a lot easier to just say like, yeah, it is really impressive that you made him do X, Y, Z than disagreeing. Sometimes you don't want to be that person. Like I've also had to be that person sometimes, to come into a room full of like 10 people who have been dying to show me something that they made. They're super proud of it, and I kind of have to tell them, it's like, yeah, It's not there. It's not fun. Like I don't like being that person, but I need to do it for the sake of someone else. And I think one of the things I regret the most on some of the Lego projects that I didn't do it more. Like there are definitely some fights that I was like, nah, it'll be fine. And it's also kind of the beauty of physical products. You have to live with your mistakes for a long time. And so there are like still some things that haunt me, not on this project actually, but some of the other ones I worked on. I was like, oh man, I wish I would have insisted more, that I would have pushed a little bit harder, because that is also your job.
Jonathan, anything?
I'd say if I had probably the most useful thing I can give you that's like a practical, very easily applicable thing, it's I worked with a very talented, very, very senior person who said whenever he would see people come with a design where he was like, I need to tell this person that this sucks. Like this is not even close. But nobody likes to be told that they worked on it for, like, as you said, they're really proud of their work. They think it's good because they put hours into it. His method that I started applying and have done since is very simple, really. It's just to always start by saying, tell me, why did you wear a blue shirt today? And then you listen to the person and you genuinely try to understand why the person thought it was a good idea to wear a blue shirt. Or like, let's say, a yellow suit to a funeral. And instead of saying, you're insane, what are you doing? You just go, why did you wear a yellow suit to a funeral? You try to understand the person's thought process. And by the end, when you say, I think if you're trying to make people feel happier at this funeral, maybe flowers would be a better way to achieve that. But people, they're so much more open to listening to you saying, do not wear a yellow shirt at a funeral when you've listened to their reason. It works pretty much every time.
I think it's just like a small thing, but I think one thing Jonathan and I've talked about, I'm a big coffee person. Thanks for the coffee map that you provided. It's been amazing. But just that with these kind of projects and the time they take to develop, I sometimes contrast it to like a barista. Sometimes I want to be a barista because you get to make like hundreds of cups of coffee, maybe in a single day. You get to iterate so many times, like refine what you do. Let's say that it takes like, on average, like 4 years to make a product like this, and you have like a 40-year career. That's not a lot of products that you get to actually put out there. And so just making them really matter, making something that you know will stand the test of time, that you'll be proud of for forever. And I see it in my own work too. I was talking to someone in the audience about it, like now that I also work in the digital space. But if you come to my studio, what happens, and you had a tour when you came over, like the first thing you see on the left is Mario, and some other things, like some physical things that like had to be injection molded and like had to be shipped somewhere. Someone had to buy it and pick it up and bring it. I also love digital things, but there's something about the physical aspect for me, and that's why I want to keep working in it. That yeah, someone had to like pick this up. They have to store it somewhere in their precious. Like we all live in cities where there's not a whole lot of space, and so space is precious. Like, but someone wanted to put this somewhere in their home and store it there. That's pretty amazing. So I try to kind of embody that mindset of just building things that matter and stand the test of time.
When you talk about building things that matter, is that in a way a sort of KPI around like how successful your design around play is? And if not, then what is the KPI around this? And there was an audience question about this as well, and I also wanted to ask it, which is why we're asking you now.
Do you want to do it? Jonathan, do you want me to go first?
No, go back.
Okay. So, I think I can share this now because it's been some years, but like I actively sometimes had to work against my KPIs at like, because if I followed the rules, I would actually sometimes make the project worse. Sometimes you can get so focused on a goal, and companies tend to kind of they tend to build KPIs around what you can measure, and sometimes it's really hard to. How do you measure fun? Is it by how loud someone laughs? like back to what I said at the beginning, some people, when they have fun, you maybe can't tell.
They don't breathe.
Right, exactly, exactly. They don't breathe. Because like measure their oxygen levels. But I think the best KPI. So I worked in the technology department. That's where we collaborate. So I was on the technology team, and the best KPI I've had was actually when it was a very qualitative measurement where they went and asked product groups like Jonathan's group and other groups like on a scale of blah blah. Of course, it doesn't have to be a measure, but like how innovative do you feel? Like this department, how much do you feel like they're on top of things? And that's like, how do you measure that? But that was actually the best thing that I as a designer had as a KPI, because that's something I can actually do. Like, do I know what's going on in the business? Do I know what's happening? Am I a good person to work with? Like, I feel like those are more like softer, more qualitative things that matter versus like where, like one of the things you get measured on often in companies is like the sales.
Yeah.
But we work on things that are like years in the future. So what do I have to do with this year's sales, right? And I think that those were some of the things that I also, when I was a manager at Bang & Olufsen, like I tried to measure the people in my team on things that they could actively do something about, and that actually became like a driving force in the project instead of something that worked against. That was a very long answer. So.
Oh, that was great. Thank you.
Great.
I think I'd say this is something I've thought a tremendous amount about when I was still at Lego. Like, are you in what you do for your career, or are you in it for the design? Like, I would encourage everyone, if you aren't already, to like very deeply think about why do you go to work. Like, everyone who knows me at Lego will know I've been there for 12 years, but I'm not some VP. There are people who rise faster than me, who have higher positions because they've done the things you need to do to rise in the ranks. Like, there are certain KPIs you can follow, and if you do that, you will rise in the ranks. I never cared about politics. Everyone who knows me there will, like, they know that. That's not a secret. And yet, when we had a recent project that's very high pressure, extremely important project, I was picked for that because, as one of our leaders said, we need that Trier energy. Trier being my last name, Jonathan Energy, because that's what I've been building. I've been building my internal brand as I care deeply about every tiny interaction we do. Like, to the point where I can get emotional about it. Because I genuinely really care, and like I'm trying to not tear up because like
It's okay to tear
my
up.
core motivation is like to actually bring like happiness to kids. Like some of the video games experiences I had as a kid, like those are like true happiness. Like playing a video game, something on the screen that could make me feel like a warm hug. That was like incredible. It's magic. Like, how do you pull off a magic trick like that? And so the things I do is to try to get closer to how do you pull off that magic? There's no KPI for that. That's working late. That's putting in the hours. That's ignoring your career trajectory. And maybe it's not smart if you want to have more money and more career. But for me, it made me happy to go to work.
Yeah, and I think I actually told Jonathan this story the other day because he wasn't there. I was sitting in the technology team when we were first building Mario, and the firmware engineer who worked on it on our side, the first time he got the Mario theme song to play on it, we were like 30 people on the floor. The whole room felt silent, and it's like a big office, things were going on.
Yeah.
The first time that sound played, everyone just like stopped talking. And it was like, I mean, actually getting goosebumps talking about it right now. There was like a goosebump moment because everyone had that, like, I think every Lego project has that state of like it's kind of vague and like, oh, is it going to happen? Are we going to launch it? But like, that was the moment where people were like, it's happening. Like, we're making this thing, we're putting it out in the world. Like, now it's actually happening.
Yeah.
And then that also kind of back to the mindset, that changes a mindset in a team as well. Because then you're no longer in the like, are we going to do this? Like, holy shit, we're doing it. Like, now we really need to we really need to do this thing.
There's always that hump to get over
Oh,
in your
yeah.
project.
Every
It's
time.
no matter what, whether it's a physical design or a digital design, there's something to get over that makes you realize, oh shit,
Every
this
time.
is happening.
Every time.
Amazing.
And back to like the mindset thing, I think that's also what brought people like Jonathan and me together. And all the teams, the best teams I've worked on at Lego when you work with someone who's willing to risk their contract. Like we've all sometimes had to do things where it's like, I'm not sure I'm allowed to do this. Like I'm putting my job on the line, because that also creates kind of a, now we're no longer doing it for the promotion or the bonus or something like that. We're actually doing it because like we'd rather lose our job than not do that. And I've always been attracted to work with people who are like that, because then there's kind of like we're in it together. We live and die together. Yeah.
Amazing. I think, quick time check, Ryo-san.
Yeah.
It is about time to wrap this session up,
It is.
right?
Yes, yes, it is. I'm trying to say it, but it is.
You can't interrupt this wholesome moment.
I'm
Okay.
getting goosebumps.
All right. I'm going to skip the audience question, but audience, know that the next session is open Q&A. They will ask you guys questions.